right, Jackie, thank you for joining me on this podcast.
Bill, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So you're from PETA. What's your role with PETA?
Well, I work in the corporate responsibility department, and what many people don't realize is that PETA has many arms, and a lot of what I do is behind the scenes outreach to encourage companies to adopt more animal-friendly practices and really to remove practices and products that do harm and ultimately that involve the exploitation, ultimately the death of animals. Sorry about that. That's a little flub there.
I didn't realize they had a whole department for just corporate engagement.
Yes, well, we would in fact love to work collaboratively behind the scenes with companies. So that's a lot of what I do.
Great,
sometimes, sorry, go right ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, sometimes we might shoot off an email telling a company, hey, did you know that this product that you're selling is implicated in the abuse of, say, ducks, geese, alpacas? And in some cases, the company might say, I had no idea. Great, we'll drop that. In other cases, it takes a little bit more of a long-term process.
Sure.
But yes.
Oh, that's great. Can you just talk just generally about PETA, just the history and what other things they do?
Oh, sure thing. PETA is the world's, it stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and we are the world's largest animal rights organization. And across our entities, and that includes PETA Asia, PETA Australia, PETA UK, a number of entities, we have over 9 million members and supporters around the world. We focus our attentions on 4 key areas where the greatest number of animals are exploited and ultimately killed. And that includes animals that are used and killed in laboratory experiments, the food industry, the clothing industry, and in entertainment.
Oh, interesting. With the corporate, sticking with corporate for a minute, where do you see the most egregious offenders?
Well, you can't really rank abuse, exploitation, and death, wouldn't you say? So, if you look at a cow in the dairy industry, you look at a sheep in the wool industry, and if you look at an animal that's being experimented upon in the laboratory, I think it's really hard to say that one is actually better off than the other. So ultimately, we would love to see animals taken out of the supply chain, regardless of the product.
That makes sense. I was just thinking in what areas, but I guess, the food industry, of course, that's a big one. In other industries, I've heard of like makeup or cosmetic industries, but I get it with clothing as well. Clothing and food would be the biggest ones.
Well, and clothing and food are, deeply implicated, right? So when you think of cattle, you think of beef, you think of dairy, and you also think of leather. So it's really hard to extricate one. And again, I doubt you could really say one form of exploitation is actually preferable to another.
Right. No, I agree. But I could see those are the big industries that you're addressing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you engage with companies in just reaching out to them, to inform them, to educate them, to talk to them. And then if you don't get a response, is that where the shareholder resolutions come in?
To a certain extent. Our campaigns, as we would call them, are very multifaceted. So it's not like we have a checklist, right? But PETA does own stock in a number of, say, food, pharmaceutical, biotech, entertainment, and other industries that are exploiting and killing animals for their products. And that includes companies, as we talked about, making everything from high fashion to fast food. And we buy shares so that we can have a presence at these shareholder meetings and to pressure them to address cruelty to animals openly. Right, and this is, as you say, typically after behind the scenes efforts have stalled. And through our shareholder resolutions, we've been able to speak directly to CEOs and encourage companies to eliminate cruel practices and products. So it's been an extremely successful tool that has saved the lives of millions of animals.
So how do you go about it? You'll do a resolution, create a shareholder resolution, and then do you have a campaign to get other shareholders informed about what's going on to try to get the votes?
Well, when you do submit a shareholder resolution, you attend the shareholder meeting and you present a supporting statement. So we don't generally do a tremendous amount of outreach to shareholders. I mean, we have a lot of, we only have a certain number of staff, but we try to speak very compellingly at the shareholder meetings when we present our resolutions.
And how have you found that? Well, actually, a couple questions. One, when did you start this strategy of actually creating shareholder resolutions? Because that's some effort involved.
You're absolutely right. And I like to say that we were doing it even before it was trendy. So from my understanding, our first shareholder resolutions date back to 1987. And this was, as you might have guessed, and as you actually mentioned earlier, for cosmetics companies and getting them to stop animal testing. But since that time, as you've seen from our list, we have purchased shares in companies in a number of different industries and presented resolutions on a host of topics.
Yeah, and how have you found the resolutions received that does sound like you're not going in with other organizations. It's really you and you're presenting, and how have you found that they're received? I imagine it varies, but...
It does vary, but we've been, I would say, especially effective, and let me give you one example, in pushing pharmaceutical companies to end this cruel and ineffective practice called the forced swim test. Now, it's widely discredited experiment, and it involves dropping mice and hamsters, rats, and other small animals into beakers filled with water and then forcing them to swim for their lives. So a number of different pharmaceutical companies, including AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, and Roche, have just dropped this forced swim test.
Wait, why would they even do it? Is it they're testing a drug or something?
Well, here's the thing, Bill. 95% of all new drugs that test safe and effective in animal tests actually fail or even cause harm in human clinical trials. So animal testing is ineffective, it's unethical, and it's really wasteful, and overwhelmingly fails to advance human health. But yes, in the case of the forced swim test, it was thought that this somehow would correlate to human beings, which obviously it doesn't.
Right, and I'm just thinking through what companies would be most receptive. I mean, it's not like you're going to create a resolution for a dairy company or a beef company, but I could see pharmaceuticals, especially if you can show it's wasting their effort, or cosmetics. I could see even the ones I saw for 2023. It's a variety of companies that aren't necessarily, it's not the beef industry, but it's tangentially impacting animals.
Yes, we have actually purchased stock in slaughterhouses and other companies like that. But you're right. So for instance, let me think off the top of my head. Oscar Mayer is one that
Really?
we did purchase. Sorry, not Oscar. Kraft Heinz. And they announced their intention to create a plant-based hot dog in collaboration with a Chilean startup that makes plant-based eggs and milk and meat. And this followed our attendance at several shareholder meetings where the CEO, Miguel Patricio, hopefully I didn't mispronounce that, responded to us directly and let us know that more vegan products were in development.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I could see that then, moving them into the plant-based world. Because that seems like a big
popular
trend.
Yeah.
That's a good one. What other types of pushes? Again, it's probably, I can imagine you're trying to make steps. It may not convert a total company into being vegan, but it may push. Do you have other examples of resolutions or of engagements that have been successful?
Oh, yes. So, what many people might not realize is that PETA is a shareholder of SeaWorld. And in 2019, we submitted a resolution urging the board to stop allowing trainers to stand on dolphins' faces and ride on their backs. And now, these stunts actually strain the marine mammals' sensitive lower jaws in a way that can actually cause damage to their hearing. And several months after we submitted the resolution, SeaWorld banned this cruel and obviously demeaning practice.
Oh, that's great. I'm surprised that you even had to go to a resolution, because I imagine you engage with them first and then they say, no, we're not going to change. And so you have to go to the shareholders to make enough pressure for them to change.
Yeah, well, this was actually not the first time regarding SeaWorld. So they actually made an announcement that they were ending their captive orca breeding program, and this was following again a submission of a shareholder resolution. And so in 2016 we withdrew our resolution because they had made that announcement. And I think this is a great example that your listeners might be interested in learning about. So sometimes companies actually prefer to negotiate with us to get us to withdraw the resolution or to forego the meeting. So we sometimes submit the resolution, and some kind of negotiation or forward movement on behalf of the company may happen even in advance of our showing up at the meeting.
And then you withdraw the resolution and don't even have to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you have a platform. I'm sure it's, I don't know what to say, like intimidating for a company to have. I mean, PETA's a big platform, so just there's pressure in just you're saying, hey, we're not happy with this behavior. It would be helpful if you change. Even before going to a shareholder resolution, I could see there's incentive to make changes.
Yes. One would hope. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I guess could you just explain a little about the shareholder process and showing up at the meeting, or what's involved to be doing this? Because it seems like, if that's an effective tool, it could be even used more.
Yes, it is a little bit of a process, as you mentioned. So in order to submit a shareholder resolution, an individual or an entity has to own a certain number of shares. And typically, you also have to submit the resolution several months in advance of the meeting. Some of your listeners might actually be familiar with this process. And it's often the case that the company doesn't want any shareholder resolution published in their proxy, which basically is kind of like an extended agenda that shareholders will get in advance of the meeting, and they will try to find a reason to have the resolution excluded from the proxy by arguing that it somehow is not in keeping with the language that one is allowed to use as a shareholder. But we've been quite successful in having our resolutions published in the proxy, and then we show up at the meeting, and sometimes they're virtual, and the resolution is presented, and you are allowed to speak in support of your resolution, and then there is a vote.
Have you seen the process change, or has it been an effective tool? Do you have any plans of doing anything differently?
Well, it's been an extremely effective tool. It is a way not only to speak directly to the corporate management, but it is also a way for shareholders to become aware of abuse that they might not know is taking place in the companies of which they're partial owners.
I could see that. Even looking at the resolutions that are out there, some companies I didn't even realize that would be an issue. But yeah, that makes sense.
And as you were saying with for instance, the vegan food, that's tremendously popular nowadays, right? And the trend towards vegan food, cruelty-free lifestyle is just really getting more and more popular. And so a lot of times I think shareholders don't realize what's going on behind the scenes. And once they hear about this, obviously they want a company to make money. So when there's an opportunity to either increase the vegan offerings or to dial back and drop products that are the product of abuse, I would imagine that many shareholders who don't know that this is happening behind the scenes see this as a win-win situation.
I agree. It is another market they could tap into. What would you say, like the percent of companies you engage with, what percent actually go to shareholder resolutions each year?
Well, that's a really complicated question. And as our campaigns are really multifaceted. We have a number of different avenues. We try, as I say, behind the scenes outreach. There are also things that consumers can do who are concerned, and we do a lot of public education. So in some cases, consumers actually might pressure a company to drop a product that is the product of cruelty. And so it's really hard to say, okay, next year we're going to submit X number of resolutions. It doesn't exactly work that way. We don't have a grid and a master plan.
Right, but I'd imagine if you're engaging with 100 companies, only 5 of them or 10 of them would actually get to the point of resolutions, whereas a lot of the others, it might just get settled ahead of time.
Right. And again, this is like I said, in an ideal world, I would call up a CEO and say, hey, did you know that the down puffer that your company is selling is the product of abuse, that the ducks and geese whose down are filling that puffer live lives of immense suffering and are ultimately slaughtered? And the CEO would say, that's horrible. We are going to switch over to an eco-friendly vegan insulation in our coats, right? In an ideal world, that would happen. And then there are these in-between scenarios where we might be talking to somebody in sustainability and somebody in corporate responsibility, and they say, hey, let's look into that. We're sorry, but in terms of our products, we've already forecasted for next season, but we're going to talk to our suppliers about the following year. So there are multiple steps, right, for a company to take. And in some cases, we've been working with companies for years to get them to dial back. And I think SeaWorld is a great example where we have, first the forced breeding is stopped, then riding on the dolphins' faces is stopped. And then, so we're playing the long game. And ultimately, we're not going to stop until cruel practices and the slaughter of animals is eliminated, but we understand that not every company is going to do this overnight.
Yeah, I imagine it's got to be an exciting time, though. Just thinking about all the plant-based products that are out there, all the other alternative. I mean, even with clothing, there are just so many alternatives to using animal-based.
Oh yes, it's a fabulously exciting time. We call it the vegan revolution that's happening. I mean, think about now as compared to 5 years ago, then 10 years ago. And if you don't mind my just circling back here to the world of animal testing, PETA has a brilliant scientific team, and they've created this game-changing research modernization deal, and it's actually a first-of-its-kind roadmap for shifting science away from experiments on animals and towards methods that are actually human relevant, like next-gen in vitro modeling or computer modeling. And this research modernization deal is backed by physicians across the United States. And in fact, after PETA shared its roadmap with members of the European Parliament last year, it voted almost unanimously to create a plan to phase out animal testing. So you're absolutely right that, it's great we can go out, we can eat vegan, we can dress vegan, but it looks like, but medical science is also getting on board.
That's great. Oh, that's really exciting that there's alternatives that may, in the long run, not even hurt companies. Like you said, a win-win.
Yes.
That's wonderful. With anything else you wanted to share? Other examples or anything else that you had?
In terms of resolutions that we've submitted this year?
Yeah, if you have any other examples you wanted to share.
Well, I think one of the really interesting ones that we submitted this year is to Amazon. And we submitted to Amazon because Amazon owns Whole Foods.
Right.
So the resolution is actually targeting Whole Foods, but because it's owned by Amazon, we've had to go through Amazon. And this is all about misleading animal welfare standards. Because Whole Foods, as many of your listeners are probably very familiar with shopping there, and they misleadingly claim that their animal welfare standards for meat and other animal-derived products are extraordinarily high and sort of the best of the best. But Whole Foods actually has a history of selling animal-derived products from suppliers that have been implicated in an array of atrocities. In fact, just last year, workers at a Whole Foods supplier were filmed treating turkeys, and hopefully you have a PG-13 or R-rated audience, because they were filmed treating turkeys not only like sporting equipment, but also like sex toys. Yeah, workers were like viciously kicking and stomping on turkeys, and they were in fact also filmed mimicking masturbation and rape. And first of all, this was supposed to be at a supplier of humane meat. And this resulted in the largest number of charges of cruelty to animals, farmed animals in U.S. history.
And that wasn't Whole Food, that was a Whole Foods supplier.
Yeah, yes.
That you were working on getting changed.
And, most recently, PETA Asia's latest investigation, it was our third investigation into the use and abuse of monkey labor in the Thai coconut industry, implicated a supplier of Whole Foods 365 brand. And if you're not familiar with monkey labor, if your listeners have never heard of this is when endangered and wild pigtail macaques are illegally snatched from their families, and then they're chained and they're tethered and they're whipped and forced to spend the rest of their lives picking coconuts.
Wow.
So for our resolution, we simply called for a report to evaluate Whole Foods animal welfare standards and their auditing procedures, because despite the fancy labeling, these welfare standards and auditing processes have clearly failed to prevent egregious cruelty in animal-derived products that Whole Foods is selling.
That's interesting. I've seen that with a lot of shareholder resolutions. Instead of saying just, we want you to stop doing this practice, it's just report on it and tell us what your screening standards are, and then this stuff will come to surface.
Well, Bill, obviously we would love it if Whole Foods would simply stop selling animal-derived products, but we have to work with the language that we are allowed to use in crafting our resolutions. And this is the reason that you've seen so many resolutions call for a report. And as you say, once a report comes out, then shareholders as well as the board of directors can see what's really going on.
Yeah. And it's not a real hard bar to, I think it's a lower bar to cross if you're just asking for a report. Just tell us what's going on.
Yeah, just to be transparent.
Yeah.
Right? So many of these companies prioritize transparency, right? And if you go to their investor relations websites and you look at their corporate responsibility reports, they will absolutely tout things like transparency across our supply chain, humane treatment of animals. And so we're just saying, okay, prove it.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. So, well, anything else you want to add?
Well, at the end of the day, we can do what we do behind the scenes, at shareholder meetings, but there is so much power in the hands of the consumers.
Sure.
You and I have just been talking about the popularity of vegan foods, of cruelty-free fashion. So anyone can do so many things on a daily basis to help save the lives of millions of animals. Just thinking about, what we eat, what we wear. We can look for cruelty-free labels on the products that we use to clean our house, to wash our hair, and we can do that. And if anyone wants to take it a step farther, there's also going to PETA.org, where we have so many resources to help people make these cruelty-free choices. And we also have petitions that you can sign to urge companies to make kinder decisions and to stop abusing and killing animals.
That's great. That's where I was getting at too, is where can people get more information and help? Is it PETA.org is the best place for them to start?
Yes, and if any of these topics have sparked their interest, they can go to our website, and we have drop-down bars for things like action, but definitely there's a search bar, so someone can type in Amazon or type in cruelty-free sweaters. This is the wrong season for that, but cruelty-free sweaters or vegan recipes, and find just an array of resources to show just how easy it is to help save animals on a daily basis.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Well, Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure.